Hi, folks. I'm Dan McDermott. This is High Tea at Harrods, which is some random name I came up with just to stand out from the crowd. It's been a while, but I have actually had High Tea at Harrods. And it was wonderful with scones and everything. But anyway, this is sort of a random
With Lord
conversation.
Parker or not?
Say again?
With Lord Parker?
No. No, I did not hang out with aristocracy, although I'm sure if I went back to London, I would have that opportunity.
I'm sure.
Yeah, this is great. This is we're just going to do a random discussion about whatever is interesting to the folks here. It's not news necessarily or tech or anything like that. It could be anything interesting. And we'd love your comments. If you want to weigh in on the YouTube channel, then we'll be watching that and interacting with you folks. So let me start with Wallace, who is joining us. What state are you in, Wallace? Or country
Phoenix.
or whatever? Phoenix. Phoenix, Arizona.
The state of Phoenix.
Well, I want to ask you. Okay, I know you want to talk about the topic you mentioned, which escapes me.
Gas prices.
Gas prices. But I'm also curious because I know, like in Virginia, gas prices we're paying like $3.70 something, and in California it's a lot higher, and in England and in Europe and a lot of countries it's like $10 or $11 a gallon. So it's a dramatically different scenario. As bad as it seems to us, we have relatively cheap gas compared to the rest of the westernized developed world. A lot of the countries that produce a lot of oil have 75-cent gas or something. But let me ask you, the Supreme Court is getting ready, I think tomorrow, to take up the Arizona immigration case. And this just came to me. My uncle lived there, and I asked him, and about Sheriff Joe Arpaio and all that stuff. I think about something like 70 or 80% of all of the, you can call them illegal immigrants or undocumented workers or whatever, go through Arizona. And there's a tremendous expense for localities in dealing with that. Their view is that the federal government isn't really doing enough to deal with the issue, and so they're trying to deal with it themselves. And the Obama administration is saying that it's a federal responsibility and hands off. So there's this clash going on, and the Supreme Court is getting ready to address that. As someone who actually lives in Arizona and is seeing the local coverage of this and experiences the issue all the time, what are your thoughts on this?
I think it's blown way out of proportion. They've over-exaggerated a lot of what's going on. I mean, the word of all this going on has kind of scared anybody from passing through Arizona. But I came from Texas, which there's more illegal immigrants that I have met over there than here in Arizona. In the area that I lived, like 5 companies in the general area had to get shut down because they were all employing illegal immigrants. But I haven't heard anything about that being here in Arizona.
What are your personal thoughts, Wallace? Are you? My thing is, I understand the security issue. I don't want Al Qaeda bringing bombs across the border. I don't like people bringing drugs across the border. At the same time, when we go to certain ethnic restaurants, we know that there is no visa available for someone who is a non-English speaking unskilled laborer. And I'm not a Cherokee and you're not a Navajo, so we're all immigrants, right? So I'm kind of understand. I mean, if we could go and make $2 million in Canada, and we could freely sneak across the border, we'd probably do that. So I'm sympathetic, but at the same time, and also if you want to come in legally, and there are jobs that are hard to fill, it can be this huge process to get in there. And the system as it is now is favorable toward Mexico and other South and Central American countries because just geographically they have an advantage. I mean, it's a lot easier to just sneak across the border from Mexico than it is to sail across from England or something. So the system's broken clearly, and they don't want to address it because it's a 50-50 issue in Florida, which is a 50-50 state. So what are your thoughts? I mean, are you sympathetic, or are you like angry, or in between, or what are your sincere thoughts on this issue?
I'm thinking that they could do it in a better way. They've always had Border Patrol. They've always had all these systems, and why within the last 5-6 years has it all gotten all hyped up? I mean, the way I see it out here is like probably 90% of my neighbors speak Spanish and don't speak that much English. So if I were to go to my neighbor and try to say, hey, could I have a cup of sugar, they wouldn't understand what I'm saying. But then I've had friends who 15 years ago, or even longer ago, that their whole family had come over, and they're now trying to become legal, and it's costing them, it's like $20,000 to try and become legal, and they've lived here for 15 years.
So it's a whole industry. It's a whole industry.
Yeah.
And I know NBC News, their Google Plus page posted something about a guy who came over as a child. Obviously, his parents brought him here. And I don't know what age. When they say child, I don't know if they mean like an infant or 17. But they said that he's trying to be a lawyer. And, of course, if you're a felon, I guess you can't be a lawyer. I don't know the details. I didn't read the post, or they didn't have a post. They just asked a question, and they didn't provide much information about it. But that was a whole interesting thing about it brings up the issue of what is the culpability of someone who is brought over here as a little child and has no control over where they're going, and then they stay here, and this is the only culture they know, and yet they're a criminal because they're staying here illegally, right? I mean, that's a whole thing, and the notion of uprooting 20 million people, which is not practical, but at the same time, you don't want open borders where people can bring bombs and drugs and God knows what terrorist-type stuff over across the border. So it is a complicated issue, and you're right there on the ground of it.
Yeah.
So I think your perspective is interesting. I want to see if anyone else has a comment on this, because we have a bunch of immigrants. I'm an Irish American. I mean, I'm a third generation. Oleg and Srik are first generation. And do any of you guys have a comment on this, a thought? And then let's go to the gas price thing. Anthony is obviously some sort of immigrant. I mean, I'm not sure what country or planet.
He's from the dark planet.
I believe illegal immigration is wrong. Doesn't matter which country it is.
What do you do with the kid who's brought here and he stays, and this is the only culture he knows? That's an interesting question, isn't it?
True.
You come over when you're 6 years old. You don't know anything else. Your parents are illegals. You may not even know you're illegal. And then all of a sudden, when you're in your teens, you ask the question or figure it out because there's no paper and your parents are secretive when they don't drive, things like that. And then all of a sudden, when you're 16, you realize, wow, I'm an illegal immigrant, but this is the only culture I know. If you went to Mexico, it would be like me trying to go to Ireland. I don't know anybody there. I've only visited there.
I believe the kids. I'm sorry. I believe the kids who came here with the parents, if they were not born here, they should have less chances of being naturalized as opposed to even if your parents are illegal and you were born here. However way you look at it, this is a free country, and if you're born here, you're born American, right? So, I mean, if you're born here and if your parents are illegal, it shouldn't matter. But the second step is if you came here as an infant and if you can prove that you didn't have any criminal charges against you and you led a good life, you went to school, blah blah blah, and basically there should be some kind of a mechanism by which to assess whether you will be a good citizen. Law can be a little lenient towards them, but if you prove that you are as bad as anybody else, then I think you should be deported. So that is my view on the whole thing. But at the same time, I also think that the regular channel of immigration to the U.S., if you're born in a country like, especially in India or China, is very difficult. If you're born in any other country, it is almost very easy.
It's not fair, the system now, because
Well,
you're at a disadvantage, but a Mexican can just pay someone a couple $1,000 and get across
It's a
the border.
complicated thing. I mean,
It is complicated. Go ahead,
it's
Oleg.
very complicated. And so, and the only thing I would add before I leave here is Srik and I have a little announcement to make. We're gonna try to do some online chess, and if it works well, we're gonna start doing hangouts and publicly share the screen so people can root for in the hangout for either me or him, and then other people will be able to participate. We'll do chess tournament hangouts.
it's been my lifetime wish to play a Russian grandmaster who defected to the U.S.
I'm not a grandmaster or anything like that, but I have the same accent that Kasparov does. Yeah, that's true. So anyway, so stay tuned for that. That's going to be recorded, and then people can analyze it or overanalyze it. And
you're
complicated with the immigration.
Riveting TV, huh?
You're determined to embarrass me, right?
No, not at all. I'm not doing it. I'm telling you up front. And looks like Alan is gone. But for some reason, Dan is speechless. I don't understand what's going on.
Okay, so Wallace, did you want to talk about gas prices?
I guess not.
Yeah, I wanted to talk about that, and then also in regards to the whole immigration and everybody from south of the border coming over. There's another issue that comes up when it comes to job hunting. I was lucky to get the job that I did, even though I don't speak Spanish. Spanish is required almost in order for me to work at where I work because of the majority of the customers speaking Spanish and not English, and I would not be able to communicate with them. So I have to go to my supervisor who does not quite speak English but speaks Spanish. So that's a conflict that I run into here in Arizona at where I work. And when I was job hunting, I ran into that situation that I had less of a chance of getting a job because I did not speak Spanish. So we can either continue going on that or going on to the gas prices, which more people can relate to.
I can jump in really quick on the immigration thing, if you don't mind. Because I live next to basically San Francisco, which is a sanctuary city. So it allows illegal aliens or immigration to stay without being deported. Even if they are convicted of a crime, they are released, which is a big problem. So, I think Shriek has it right on the nail there. There's a path to legal immigration, and I kind of believe that it needs to be enforced on a federal level. All states, all cities do the same thing, because you cannot have a situation like in San Francisco where it's a haven for that type of activity, and then go into another state such as Arizona where they're cracking down on it, or whatever. So I think it is a complex issue, and it does break up families and does do these things. But it's something that has to be dealt with in a unilateral way that's fair. So
if you look at the southern economies, a lot of probably like Wallace said, if you look at the southern economies, a lot of companies, a lot of farmhouses, etc., depend a lot on illegal immigrants. So I think there are.
But there's a way to make that a legal event. There's work programs and there's things like that can be employed to get that type of worker that maybe perhaps a U.S. citizen doesn't want to do, and you can get in a foreign work visa program or some kind of card or work program that can be done.
I'll ask all the U.S. citizens here. Are you guys willing to do the jobs, hard labor? I'm not talking about construction work. I'm talking about a lot of other jobs done by Spanish folks. I mean, I'm not saying that they do. Are you willing to do that?
I'm doing it right now. That's what I'm doing. I work outside in the Arizona heat sorting metal. That's what I do. That's my job.
Yeah. Yeah, so, no, I don't deny that the immigrants or day workers or whatever you want to call them are not hardworking. I think they are extremely hardworking, and I think our economy is based on, I hate to say this, but cheap labor, because they are. It's just they're being exploited because they can be, and that's what happens. So.
That question's more relevant in a good economy. Now people are more willing to do hard stuff, and this explains why Wallace is thin and fit, because he's doing physical work in the hot sun in Phoenix.
Yeah.
Good for you.
Here I am, a computer geek, working out in the.
Good for your health.
You probably are unable to have any kind of conversation that interests you with any of your colleagues. I guess that's a problem a lot of us face.
There's a political conflict as well. The same. I'm saying, if you look at the left versus right, most of the companies or most of the farmhouses which are in the south will not want to lose the cheap labor at the same time, right? So I think the immigration issue is not really anymore a left versus right issue. It is basically businesses which use people for cheap labor versus. So it is not a political issue anymore. That's what I think. And then I understand that, okay, now when the U.S. is going through a recession, you probably need Americans probably need to do any kind of job just to get by. But is it really fair that because of a recession, you are against it, but when there is no recession and the economy is really happening, you don't really mind illegal immigrants doing the jobs?
Yeah, and there's and I agree. And there's the other side too, where you hire someone and you have no idea that they are illegal, because I had some work done on my house, and someone recommended this guy to do it. He came in, he did it, and then I find out that he's been here in the U.S. for 25 years and he's not a legal citizen. But I wouldn't know that. It's how would you know? So it's hard, and I think the whole thing's hard. There is no easy answer.
No, and securing the border. I mean, you have a huge border. It's not very easy. People always gonna find a way to get in. I mean, through I don't know, digging tunnels or whatever. But one more side to this is, if I actually know that in New York City, there are. It is. I mean, we when we say illegal immigrants, we are mostly talking about Mexicans or Spanish folks, which is highly wrong. Let me give you an example.
Right.
New York City is full of Eastern Europeans, and I have friends. I know. I mean, you don't even know. They've been illegal immigrants forever.
Yeah.
A lot of ladies, who end up coming here on J1 visas, for example,
Right.
student visas, or visiting visas, B1, B2, whatever. They in a city like New York, you don't really need to have a credit card, or you don't really need to have any kind of identification to survive. There are people who are willing to hire you to give you hourly wage jobs, and you can just work there, and you can rent a place. You can live. It's a big city, right? But having said that, nowadays, even for babysitting, for example, or hiring a full-time nanny, government is striking down in such a way that all this online au pair websites or even restaurants, they are checking for visa status.
Yeah.
So in the last 1 year to 2 years, I know that a lot of people have returned to Europe, because if you cannot do a job, then you will leave, right? You can't survive here.
But like the guy, I'm just going to go back just to dovetail on your thing, and then I have to actually leave. The guy who was here for 20 years, that kind of worked on my house, that is not legal, right? Has a bank account. He doesn't have a driver's license, but he rents, and there's a whole network of people that work that know how to kind of get them into a bank and sign them up for a checking account and savings account so they can cash. It's just like there's a whole underground economy and an underground kind of like like the Underground Railroad type thing, where they just survive and they know how to do it and get, and I hate to say this, but kudos to them. They work the system.
That's the thing. It's a tough call. Like, it's complicated. I mean, what do you do with a woman who came here and had a kid? The kid's a complete U.S. citizen, born here, and the mother is illegal. Are you going to, and then 12 years later they get busted. You got a 12-year-old who's allowed to stay here and the mother, and they're going to kick him out. The 12-year-old knows nothing of the home country. It's just so complicated. And I'm I'm torn between sympathy for their predicament because you can't blame someone. I mean, all of us are capitalists here, and we're trying to better ourselves. We work, we try to want to provide for our families. And if you could go easily across a border into Canada and get quadruple the income, and here you're starving, and over there you could have a comfortable life and send money back to your family and stuff like that, you'd do it in a second. If you could do it largely with impunity, which is the situation. So it's a tough call. It's easy to demagogue. It's really hard to analyze, and it's impossible to easily solve. I want to go to Pam and Anthony in 1 second and get your thoughts in that order, but let me look at the comments for the folks watching here. Look at In-N-Out Burger, fast food, low wages. They hire only U.S. citizens and don't have a problem finding people. That's true. There are but there are certain regions, and that's probably true for most of your national franchises or major regional franchises. It's the little independent mom and shops that can get by with this. But I would say that it's a regional issue. There are certain areas, especially in the agricultural industry, where it's really difficult to fill these jobs with homegrown folks. In Winchester, Virginia, the area, they call it Camp Jamaica. It's a bunch of Jamaicans that they bring over, and they pick the apples. And I have to think that if they could find local people to do it, it would be a whole lot easier and cheaper for them than flying or shipping a bunch of Jamaicans and housing and feeding them in some camp over the summer. I mean, it would be a whole lot easier for them if they could pay, 8, 9, 10, 12, or whatever it is an hour for local people. It would be a lot cheaper than bringing people in from, some island somewhere. So it depends on the region, and you can argue either because there's no, it's a subjective analysis. Thanks for reminding me. I wanted to do some of the, okay, that's an embedding thing with Alan. It's irrelevant what jobs we or anyone in the Hangout would do. True. I mean, I guess that goes to the point of I don't know. I'm not sure exactly what point that is. But anyway, okay. Let me. Pam's left. Anthony, what are your thoughts on this? You're muted, Anthony.
He probably is eating dinner.
We can't hear you. I think, Anthony, when you rejoined, your mic was not working. Probably you have to get out and get in again.
Normally there's no problem hearing Anthony.
Now, what happened is in between Anthony appeared as twice, and I think somehow his mic got screwed up.
Pam, can you talk?
Yes, I can talk.
All right, for the YouTube viewers, Pam is using... this is not actually Pam, it's a skull, so...
There you go.
That's bad.
There you go. Pam, what are your thoughts on this? This is a complicated issue, isn't it?
It's really complicated, and I lived in California since 1976 when I was 9 years old, and I took 7 years of Spanish, and I speak Spanish, and well, I've probably forgotten more Spanish than I've ever learned, but still, I can definitely understand it. So, I don't know what the real solution is, but I do know that there are hidden costs to the cheap labor, and some of those costs are things like here in California, migrant workers don't get health care, so they use our emergency rooms for health care, and there are laws that stipulate that hospitals can't turn people away because they can't pay, and it drives our healthcare costs up, so that consumers pay one way or the other. Another thing is they can't get driver's licenses, so they can't get insurance. So we have hundreds of thousands of unlicensed drivers on the road, and uninsured drivers on the road. That drives up costs. Schooling, public schools are free, and they do not ask about the status of either the children or the parents, and most illegal immigrants don't pay property taxes, which pay for their schooling, so that's more costs.
Well,
so,
most of them rent, and the owner's paying the taxes, right? I mean, the idea that an illegal immigrant could get a mortgage and buy a house is...
No, they do. They do. They absolutely do get mortgages
Really?
here. Yes, absolutely. The banks do not require... in fact, there's a program here to help undocumented workers to buy homes.
That makes me ask Pam a question to you. When Hillary Clinton was running for the primaries, she proposed, I think it was Hillary Clinton, I'm not sure, that Hillary Clinton. Hillary?
Okay.
I think she said something like there should be a way to give licenses to illegal immigrants so that at least, remember that controversy? What do you guys think about that?
Well, on one hand, I really think that it makes sense to, if they're going to be on the road driving cars, I would much rather them understand the rules of the road and follow the rules of the road, and also, potentially be insured.
I mean, they have tests in Spanish, so...
Police Chief of Los Angeles, Charlie Beck, is actually advocating, giving driver's licenses to illegal immigrants, and I don't disagree with it, because in the long run it saves lives. I don't disagree with them getting health care if they are in dire need of it either, because it saves lives. I mean, I'm not saying I'm again anti-illegal immigration. All I'm saying is that cheap labor for the growers. I mean, California is the #1 agricultural state in the United States, and we have a lot of immigrant workers here, and what might be cheap, you might be buying your lettuce cheaper, but in the long run, it really doesn't save in the long run. So I do think that there needs to be some kind of reform and some kind of change to the policies, but I just don't know what that is. I just don't have enough experience. I have my personal opinion, and I just don't think that personal opinion is enough to weigh in, really. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I want to go to Anthony next, but I want to make one observation. In Virginia, if you want to buy a gun, you go to a gun store, and when I bought a .357 Magnum at a gun store, and the approval process was about a 30-second phone call. He called an 800 number, put in my Social Security number, and got a yay or nay, and I got my gun. But if you have a job and you want to hire someone from overseas, and you can prove that you can't find local people to do the job, and you're going to take care of the person, and you want to bring them in, it could be like 6 months to 2 years to try to get that approval. And it just seems to me that if they can approve you to buy a firearm in 30 seconds, why does it take months or years to legally come in here when you have a job lined up, when you can show that you can't fill that job in the local economy? It just seems like you're almost creating a situation that encourages people, to want to, risk their lives and pay thousands of dollars and create this whole cottage industry with the coyotes to bring you across the river. Anthony, what are your thoughts on this?
You know, it's interesting because we had a fast ferry that made a connection between Rochester and Toronto, and as a result of that, the Border Patrol opened up an office right by the port of Rochester. But eventually, the fast ferry went bankrupt, and you know, so there was, you know, you would think that the Border Patrol came in explicitly because of the fast ferry, and once the fast ferry went away, that you wouldn't need the Border Patrol anymore, right? Well, the Border Patrol actually increased after the fast ferry went away, and judging by the vehicle increase, at the Border Patrol units at the building, it increased anywhere from like double or even triple, the amount of vehicles that sit there now. And they say the reason that they did it is now that so they can do Border Patrol at the airport and at the train station. Actually, just this, I don't know, maybe a month and a half ago, I saw a state trooper that had someone pulled over, and he was nowhere near like anything. He was like nowhere near the port of Rochester. He was nowhere near the airport. He was nowhere near the train station. And so there was a state trooper and there was a Border Patrol unit behind him, and as we were driving past him, another Border Patrol unit was coming up. But I have to wonder, if we have all this Border Patrol, going on in Rochester, I have to wonder if it would be better served, done on the border states, right? Well, the Mexican border states. Obviously, Rochester actually is a border city, technically. But apparently, immigration, illegal immigration is a huge issue in New York State. I actually read an article in today's local newspaper about how immigration apparently is down recently, and they attribute it to the economy being down, which comes back to Americans getting upset when the economy is down or up, and it changes the outlook on illegal immigration. But because the economy is down, Mexicans aren't interested in aren't as interested in illegally coming over to the United States. And then the article went on to say that it's also compounded. There's less because there's less Mexicans being born in Mexico, so there's less people since the 1970s, when I guess it was spiked, illegal immigration. There's less coming over to America because there's less of them to come over. So, and then going to the a kid that is brought over by their parents to the United States illegally. I understand that the dilemma, that it's not the kid's fault that his parents brought him over, but at the same time it's not our fault that the child illegally crossed the border one way or the other. I think maybe there should be a system put in place, and I don't know what the specifics of this system should be, but maybe when a kid that was illegally brought over by his parents turns 18, maybe he should get a one chance to fast track himself to as a legal citizen. And maybe one of the requirements should be that graduated from high school and has a job, and obviously it shouldn't be simple like this kid didn't graduate high school, he's a dropout and has no job, and those type of kids that were brought over by their parents and now have turned 18. Those kids should be sent over back to Mexico, just like any other illegal immigrant. But I would say yes, there should be a system in place for kids that were brought over by their parents to potentially fast track them to legal citizenship in the United States.
Okay, Sariq, hold your thought one sec. I'm going to look at the YouTube comments, and then I'm going to go to you on a final follow-up on this, and then I want to talk about this this young lady in China who fell through a sidewalk, which is just wild. Okay, let me look at the comments here, and from Inspector, kudos to them. Are you serious? Kudos for criminals not working the system. They're gaming the system, stealing Social Security cards and more. Damn. And then Alan responds, look at the Alabama farmers who had produce rotting in the fields because they couldn't find enough legals to pick the crops at the rates they were paying. Keyword, a liberal would say, at the rates they were paying. Look at the Florida tomato farmers who thrive on illegals and immigrants, or migrants. And then Inspector, it's easy to solve deport when illegals are discovered, fine, and or jail employers. Is that not simple? That's a good point. If they just really crack down on the employers, that would solve it, but not that would solve the one issue, but not the issue of who's going to pick those tomatoes. When something wrong has gone on unaddressed, there will be a period of adjustment, and it will be rough. Inspector, as to whether I or anyone else who doesn't need a job would do the work is irrelevant. There are a lot of folks getting welfare and should be put to work. That's an interesting question. All these folks getting the government checks that Chris Christie loves to talk about all the time. Maybe they could pick tomatoes. I don't know any cut and dry solution will work. The South at one time was dependent on slavery. When slavery was rightly abolished, there was a period of adjustment. In terms of good tactics for the economy of a country, the government should call them to register so to start managing the situation better. In matters of right versus wrong, those who don't have the courage to do what is right call the problems complex or complicated or difficult. I mean, I think that's BS. It is a complicated issue. You sound like people actually want to solve it, or they don't want our immigration rules written to be as permissive as they can get away with because they don't want to, quote-unquote, adjust. You have a very valid point, but people don't want the consequences. And then the immigration is not easy for many legally. All right, so Sariq, final thought on this, and let's move on. And then I want to talk about this this young lady who fell through cement. Your final thought on immigration.
Here is what I think a better way to approach this. I believe, as I said before, irrespective of whether parents or one of the parents is an illegal immigrant, birthright, citizenship is a birthright. So if the kid was born here, you have to grant him or her citizenship. In my opinion, that is non-negotiable. But I actually thought about this when Anthony mentioned something similar. If a kid was a minor when he or she came here, and if he's identified as an illegal immigrant, one thing the government could do is give him a refugee status. As soon as he's identified, give him a refugee status. Like that happens with anybody, even now, if they cross over to the U.S. or maybe some years back, I don't know, and they actually ask for give up and say I'm a refugee, I need refuge basically. And then that basically means you are in the system, and now you can be monitored. And when you are a refugee, you are given certain privileges. You may not be eligible for a lot of different things that citizens are eligible for, but you probably will have an identity, and then you have to work your way through the system and go into the queue of immigration with everybody else. And I don't even think that a refugee should be given even one chance of crime. If he even has the tendency for one crime or any kind of fraud or anything, he should be deported. Doesn't matter whether he came here as a minor. But that refugee if you actually offer refugee status for kids people who came in here as kids, and if they have a clean history, then a lot of this illegal immigration problem will be solved. And also, what Pam mentioned, if you give that identity and if you allow them to work a little bit, whatever job they want to do, if they're educated for that, probably will solve healthcare problems quite a bit.
Okay, two comments. One, I hear you, and two, I love the way you say refugee. Refugee.
How do you say that?
Refugee.
Refugee.
Okay.
But you can say it however you want, as long as you make me some of your, bring me some of your wife's famous chicken curry.
I don't really care how I pronounce it anymore.
I don't know why she never does beef curry. I'm just kidding. That's a reference to her April Fool's gag. Okay,
Well,
I got one. Go back to Sri. I got one thing here. Dan, you're reading the comments all run together like they were made by one person, and you're in a huge hurry from Inspector. I apologize. You're right, and I'll try to do better on that. The thing is, right now it's slow because of the time of day, and because I chose a weird headline for the show, but often there'll be a bunch of people, anywhere from 30, 40 to over 100, and the comments come in so fast. We're trying to get the hangout people to talk. At the same time, we're trying to encourage and acknowledge and interact with the folks commenting on YouTube. So it's like really fast-paced sometimes. So I was in that mode, but I apologize, and it's a point well taken. From Dim, another thing is it's hard to pronounce some of these YouTube names. From watching on YouTube Live, Dimolander69, consequences depend on the quote-unquote terms of the government. It is the benefit of every government, taxes, etc., to call them in. Most of family people will register. And then from Inspector to Sarik, how easy or difficult is it to immigrate is something that should be addressed through legislation. Once the laws are determined, they must be followed and enforced. So final thoughts on that, and then I want to talk about Cement Girl. Sarik?
I was actually going to talk about the biryani part. I mean...
or whatever you want to talk about.
Right. Well, for some reason there is the stereotype that most Indians are vegetarians. Well, I know that a lot of Indians in the U.S. are vegetarians, but fortunately my parents decided to make me a non-vegetarian when I was like 3 years old. Whatever. My mom is vegetarian, by the way. It is not because, unlike most Westerners think, a lot of Indians don't eat beef, not because cow is a god. That is a very, what do I say?
Stereotype.
Stereotypical notion. It's not that. A lot of people just doesn't want to eat beef because it's unhealthy. When even goat or mutton, whatever you call it, lamb, yeah, whatever. But yeah, a lot of people eat chicken and fish, blah blah blah. But I eat everything, so I'm fine.
I was just picking on you.
I know. I just wanted to clarify the stereotype.
The stereotype. I love the way. Oh my God, I could listen to Sarik talk all day. Okay, so Sarik, tell us. You posted today. I'd seen it earlier. I think on Drudge Report, and it's kind of a bum rap on this young lady. On Drudge Report, because I get his tweets, right? And he has wild stuff. I mean, I love Drudge. You'll find these crazy stories. Man accidentally chops off arm with homemade guillotine. I mean, just like, what the hell?
It sounds like
absolutely insane. But I saw a story today. A girl on cell phone falls through pavement or cement or something. And then Sarik posted the actual news story. I guess, I don't know if it was from the BBC or ITN or China or whatever, but it showed the video. The girl was, in fact, on the cell phone, but that was irrelevant. This wasn't like, texting girl runs into pole type story. This was just the cement was, it gave way. And I was looking at this, and apparently there was like a 6-foot space underneath the cement, right? So this was a crazy story, but it was kind of a bum rap in that the cell phone had nothing to do with it. She was just walking along and fell through the cement gave way, fell through a hole, and then a cab driver, tell us the rest of the story, and then the rest of you guys chime in. This is really interesting.
I think it is not 6 feet. I think it's like 6 meters or something.
Yeah, so it was an potential injury going on.
Oh yeah,
Who knew that there were these catacombs under sidewalks? That's a whole other thing.
Oh, that's what Alan said. I mean, almost all the major cities have this. If you look at it, New York City is like what, 3 layers. There are places in New York City which is like we all know that the subway system is called a city under the city, right? So I'm not surprised that that happened. But what I'm really surprised is it is actually the pavement just giving away. That shows poor construction. You cannot really imagine that happening. Now I know that everybody who sees that video when they go to China, they're probably going to think twice when they walk on the pavement. They're like, hey Sheila, oh she left. Okay, yeah, I mean I think then a cab driver who was driving by. It is actually, if you see the video, it is very difficult to spot the girl falling down. It happened so quickly. I think a cab driver saw this, pulled up, and then he came out, and somebody called the fire service, and then they, lowered a ladder or something, and then pulled the girl out. It was actually nice to see that, irrespective of the fact that there's 6 meters of whatever catacombs underneath.
How much is that in feet? I'm terrible at conversions.
That's a whole observation I hadn't thought of. Pam, can't you imagine people cautiously all around the world now, like each step is precious, like you're going to like test it out before you walk the next step on some sidewalk, wondering if you're going to just randomly fall through.
All major cities have like an underground area. I mean, Los Angeles does, San Diego does, and those are places that are going to have the big earthquake eventually. And if you don't, if you're not careful with the construction, like Sreek said, you're cutting corners. Obviously. They cut corners. I mean, there's no way that 100-pound woman should fall through the sidewalk. And it was probably, if you look at the video, it was a perfect square. And my guess is that it had been repaired, that they had gone in there for something or so, for whatever reason, and it looked like it had been repaired. So it could be that the repair was faulty.
I also think that, pardon me if I'm wrong, I think some of the Chinese construction or manufacturing has been considered for poor quality. I'm not saying Foxconn or any of the products we get from there for direct marketing in the US, but I believe that a lot of people have expressed complaints in the actual quality of many of the products, and those things which they export. So imagine.
This is looking for me, Sreek.
It's news for you. Hi, Sheila. Sheila, can you hear us?
She said it's not working for her.
Why is that? We can see you. Anyway, so Sheila, hold on, I'll get back to you. 1 second. So basically, I think because of the governmental corruption and the contractors, etc., there's no way a payment like that can just go. You know what I'm saying?
Tell us what the headline was on your story when you posted this and what you meant to say by that, because that was interesting in itself.
I'm trying to take a look at it.
I think it was Another Day in China, or
yeah. I mean, so
elaborate on that, because that's interesting. That's a whole other aspect of this.
Okay, you guys talk. I'll just take a look at what was that.
It was just it was interesting.
Just Another Day in China.
The difference in quality and what they're shipping to Walmart and what their people have to endure. But it did seem like a repair job because it was a perfect square, right?
Yeah, Dan. I did a rather extensive paper on Walmart and their factories in China. And one of the things that Walmart does is that they have inspectors on the ground in China to ensure the quality of the products that are made there. And if those factory owners are found to be lacking in in quality or even the way that they treat their workers. Walmart will fire them, so to speak, and get someone else to make the product. So that's quality control. You can't discount that too much. The fact that Walmart requires that kind of quality control for their products. I mean, yeah, are they cheap and everything? Yes, but there's still a minimum quality that they have to meet in order to be customers of Walmart. So
yeah,
anyway.
I see varying quality standards there, and typically I mean, sometimes you get burned buying a product there. Sometimes it's fantastic and a great price, but typically, in my experience, when I've gotten burned on a product, I'll see that product discontinued. So there is an economy of scale there, in that they do weed out, the garbage. And
yeah, they're not the.
Do we want to pay 3 times for something? I mean,
they're not the. Yeah, they're not the largest retailer on earth for no reason. I mean, the Mexican bribery scandal aside, Walmart is they definitely have their stuff together, so to speak, and they have an excellent.
Isn't that kind of a bum rap, though, Pam? Isn't that the way it works around the world? I know from living in 20 different countries. Money talks, right?
Yeah,
and
money talks. Money talks, but corruption is illegal in those countries anyway. You mentioned before that you lived in Japan, and Japan is rife with corruption, and there are several South American countries that are rife with corruption, in European countries and stuff like that. And that might be the way things are done. That might be the way things are done. But that's not.
That's okay. We're pro dog.
That might be the way things are done, but that doesn't make it legal.
That's true,
in those countries.
But I see these stories, and they pick on these national names, like the Foxconn controversy with Apple. I mean, every company uses them. All these. I mean, every phone you buy, there's no local phone manufacturing facility near any of our homes, right? So and of course it was obviously this guy made up a bunch of stuff about Foxconn, famously on NPR and or PBS, whichever. I think it was NPR, and it was kind of a bum rap. But let me look at the comments coming here. There's one question for you, Pam. Let me look here. The South at one time was dependent on. Oh, let me see here. In terms of good tactics for the economy of a country, I think I read that one earlier. From Dimlander, in terms of good tactics, the economy of a country, the government should call them to register so as to start managing the situation better. That is on our discussion of illegal immigrants or undocumented workers, depending on your perspective or what state you live in. In balance of right versus wrong, those who don't have a courage to do what is right call the problems I think I read that.
Yeah, you read that.
Yeah, I'm trying to catch up here. I apologize. The immigration is not easy for many legally. That's from Sreek, from Inspector. From let me find it here. Oh gosh. Okay, how easy or difficult is it for immigrants to? Is something that should be addressed through legislation once the laws are determined that must be followed and enforced. I think that's where I left off, and I apologize because Indian food is fantastic, vegetarian or not, from Inspector. I agree.
Spicy.
Oh yeah, peels the enamel off your teeth. Where do you think the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles live? From Inspector.
That's
Also
under
from
the street.
Inspector wants to ask Pam what she used to display the skull image. And Alan
It's
says not even.
it's my integrated Dell webcam software that came with my Dell laptop. So I can do scenes, or Dan doesn't like it when I do the avatars, but I can do cat. I can do monster. I got baby.
That's funny.
Emo, teenage, vampire,
I
dog,
go to the mall for that.
and there's another dog.
Wow, that one's not as nice as the cat. The cat's definitely.
No. Yeah, this is Dan's favorite.
And then
The cute kitten.
yeah, let's go to the cute kitten.
We have a new guest. Oh, it's not a new guest.
And Monica's here, or is in the process of being here. And not even subways right underneath the sidewalks in many cities are the extended basements. That's interesting. I wonder if some of these cities that are hurting for money could fatten their coffers by running storage space underneath their sidewalks, and then maybe pad them down so that when some random
so that
girl
when the citizens fall through, yeah.
right. Or maybe they could build better sidewalks so that you don't fall through. But that's a topic for a different day, I guess.
I do know that in Texas they do run into situations where whenever it rains, water runs underneath the roads and sidewalks, and cars have literally fallen into holes driving down the street in Texas.
Does anybody else see that? How Wallace is all... How
I
is
think
that?
Wallace has some sort of effect going on.
I'm on fire.
How do you do that? It's a thermal imaging kind of a thing.
It has to do with Manicam. It's a free application for your webcam.
Interesting.
Yeah, that's what I use to... Because you can also... It's got, like, desktop share and all sorts of cool effects and everything.
Monica, welcome.
Oh, thank you. I saw this hangout was about tea, but it looks like the tea is over.
No, we were having high tea at noon. We just
Have you been on air since noon?
no. It was just a random name. I was trying to figure out a name, and apparently it worked.
Okay.
It's like it.
No, Monica, he
Well,
has.
you
He's
checked
been on.
the one tea.
He's been on air for almost.
I'm good. I was like, oh,
Yesterday.
someone's drinking tea on air.
No, I was just earlier today we did a talk about Google Drive, and so it was really tech, and it was great. But I just wanted to have like a social, what if we were sitting around a table at Harrods, as I've done before, and had high tea with scones and the whole thing, and what would we talk about? So I just wanted like a social hangout. But what's interesting that you've read today or seen today, or what is tickled your funny bone or made you interested or angry or happy or whatever? What's going on with you, Monica?
Well, Obama is in town in Boulder, Colorado, and he is giving a talk right now to the public at the university, well, mostly university students, about the cost of tuition and like student debt. But I skipped it because I'm not feeling super well. And I'm content with not going. It would be a huge mess of people. So when I saw your hangout that was about tea, I thought, I'll just pop in there and see people drinking tea. But
what do you think? It looks like the polls are neck and neck now. It's going to be a really interesting race. And this is before, of course, the debates will determine a lot of this stuff. But it looks like it's going to be Romney. And it looks like it's going to be, obviously it's going to be Obama. So, those are the choices. What are your thoughts, how this is going to play out? And do you think that if the Supreme Court overturns part of the health care plan, how that might impact it? Or do you have any thoughts on that?
Oh, yes. I hope very much that they overturn the entire health care law. I doubt very much that I will survive if it is implemented in its current form.
Elaborate
I'm on
that.
Medicaid. I'm on Medicaid. I am one of those people who is on Medicaid because the cost of medications is so expensive, and because I receive twice monthly infusions of immunoglobulin. These sort of things cost Medicaid and the Medicaid program so much money that in President Obama's bill, he expanded the Medicaid program to include the bottom 30% of the entire population of the country, but he doesn't increase funding significantly. So this is kind of a recipe for disaster, adding so many more people to an already strained pool of resources, and then going, oh, but there's no more money. It's like, well, people like me would just not make it is the answer. So I am waiting on that Supreme Court verdict with tense anticipation. For real.
How do you think it will impact the race?
I hope that most Americans have the sense to know that, like, well, Obamacare was a great bill in concept. It was killed in execution. It sustains a broken system. Maybe it'll buy it another 10 years of viability, but then we will run out of money and time again. And the only chance for our country is to go to a single-payer health care system in the long term.
And actually, I thought you were talking about going to the past where we had completely privatized system.
America has a completely privatized system right now.
I agree.
Except for a few exempt groups, which work in a really
Dan, that's very
inefficient way.
Sorry to interrupt you. That's very interesting because there are a lot of people on the left as well as on the right. I'm not saying politically, but in terms of looking at the healthcare bill from different angles. I know a lot of liberals or progressives who want the law to be repealed because they want a single-payer system like most of the European countries, and as well as people on the right or people who actually believe that in my opinion, I'm kind of independent politically. In my opinion, if you have a system like the one which you had before the healthcare bill came in, the cost of medication will become even more expensive, and when you start losing jobs, you probably will not be able to afford it. When you have a job and if your company is providing your healthcare, you might be able to survive, but otherwise, if it's a completely privatized system, you may not be able to. So it is interesting, both sides of the political spectrum. One side, because, and to ask Monica, originally I think Obama proposed a single-payer system, right? Or close to it. Universal health care.
Basically, something close to it, conceptually close to it.
Right. Because, go ahead.
But currently, our country spends over $7,000 per capita on each individual person, like including the people who do not have health care. Most countries with socialized medicine spend about $2,000 to $3,000 per capita on each citizen. It's because when you have a system like this where some people have it and some people don't, and it's dependent on where you work, and you change your job every couple of years because the economy is very volatile, you're constantly losing and regaining health insurance. And when the cost of premiums goes up, many people put off going to the doctor. They might feel like, oh, maybe I should get checked out for cancer. I'm not, I'm kind of worried about that lump, but they don't want to pay the fee, and they think it's not actually that big, so they postpone it. And what happens when thousands of people do this same thing because they're incentivized by money to try and save a little bit on preventative care? They end up like me, in a wheelchair, going in and out at the doctor. They go medically bankrupt, and they fall back on the resources of the entire country. So what you do with the type of privatized system we have right now is you create many more people who are like me, whose bodies are kind of permanently broken because we have lived with a system where you couldn't survive if you got severely ill. And the cost of premiums, man, has been skyrocketing. It's on average $3,500 for the individual now.
Let me just interrupt you for a second. Dan, remember the conversation we had, and I said, if Obama's bill is repealed, from the statistics what I saw, the only way America can survive and have health care for without bankrupting the government is probably to have a single payer system. So actually there was a Forbes article on it. It was pretty neutral. They analyzed all the situations, and actually I believe that Obama is secretly laughing himself that Supreme Court is willing to throw it out, because if Supreme Court is willing to throw it out, yeah, maybe Romney has a moral victory, but and maybe Romney will win the election, but the same Romney will be forced to sooner or later introduce a system like single payer. You heard it from me.
That's very true. It's absolutely true. If Romney gets elected, he'll have to do it because there's no alternative. People have to be seen and the catch is the ER. Like, you can't let people die, and so people without health insurance are constantly going in and out of the ER, which is so less than ideal. Each ER visit is thousands of dollars, and most of these people can be seen at a private clinic if they just had some basic form of government health insurance. And
the reason why I said that is because there was a calculation. I think it was posted by Forbes again, and that calculation was staggering. We can all talk political points about, oh, you know what, we can have there are so many other viable healthcare proposals out there, but any of these proposals out there, any of them, if you look at it, McCain had his own proposal. Every presidential candidate who ran with Obama in the primaries had their own proposal. Nobody could solve the problem. No single plan, including Obamacare, can solve the problem. And does that mean you're going to let your citizens without insurance die? You cannot do that, right? And as she said, as Pam said, you walk into a hospital, you are sick. Doesn't matter who you are, whether you have insurance, blah blah blah. Even an illegal immigrant, you will get treatment. Who is going to pay for that? The taxpayer. So
no, the
problem is also that basically people like me, I hate to be this blunt, but I'm just going to be this blunt because it's the truth. People like me don't die. Like, we basically fall into the state of, I now use a power wheelchair, like I have a lot of things that don't work, like I went blind in one eye, I had strokes in my brain, had pulmonary embolism a couple times. Currently, I've had food poisoning for the past 9 months. So these are all interesting little things, but none of them has actually killed me. I'm still sitting here talking to you. But because of that, I'm still on Medicaid. I'm still going in and out of the hospital. I'm getting kind of inefficient care because that's what Medicaid provides. And I'm saying, I am 32. I didn't have to get this severely ill this quickly. But I lived in this broken system for so long, and trying to pay for my medications wore me down. There were times when I went basically without food so that I could try and pay for my medication. And eventually, I wrote all this up into a big post, but eventually, I got so sick that, maintaining my health takes all my time now. There are many people in this sort of position.
I just want to add that it is not my position. I have no right to say what America should do because I'm not a citizen here. It is not my position that you should go to a single payer or not. But what I'm saying from a financial analyst standpoint is you guys don't have much choice. The politicians know this. Republicans and Democrats know this. What is important for right now is to win the Congress and win the Senate and win the presidency. But Dan, mark my words, in the next 8 years, that doesn't matter who is going to be ruling the country in all these three areas, there will be a momentum towards single payer because there is no way you can just put the simple math out there. There is no way you can survive.
The math has been hidden for a really long time, and that's why it's been sustained.
And let me add this too. I have a good job. My wife has a good job. We have great health care. And I have probably one of the best health care available in the country in terms of private jobs. But I don't want my health care to go down in quality when I get into a single payer healthcare system, so that is not my wish. But ideally, I'm just being selfish for myself and my family. But the truth is far from there, much, much far.
That's the thing. People are afraid looking at other things that are run by the government that are not efficiently done.
There are two
You know,
ways.
we're watching what's happening with the Postal Service, right? And
Oh,
Well,
the
there is a
Postal Service is a totally different
but
issue,
it's
though.
the whole thing
I can
is
tell you that Medicaid functions relatively well in my state, but there are other states where it's basically like a train wreck, and it would be
that.
far. Sorry,
Go ahead. I'm sorry.
I mean, the people who are opponents, Monica, are saying like, why should I have to pay for this? This is not my problem, you know.
Oh, but it is everybody's problem.
But
And
it
that's
is
the thing.
everybody's problem because you're paying for it either way. Because when you go to get, I mean, you're paying for the person before and after you who doesn't have health insurance.
That's a
Right.
simple
Get
truth.
sick. And they're using the emergency room, as Tariq said, as their doctor's office, and then the government pays for it, so, or the hospital writes it off, which goes back
Right.
to, and then
I can't even tell you, in the Boulder ER, they have like 5 cops on duty all the time because there are so many homeless folks that go in and out of the ER. And, like, it's really scary to go there. Like, I try to avoid it whenever I can, but, many people, that's the only resource.
mhm.
So they're constantly there, especially if they're in a, compromised position like many of the homeless people are.
Another thing is they killed off the individual mandate. The idea that you could have health insurance, or the ban on not covering pre-existing conditions,
Oh, yeah.
coupled with a lack of an individual mandate, is a recipe for disaster, because it'd be like being able to not have car insurance, and then when you get in a big accident, you can get on the phone and call, Geico or Allstate and say, cover me. And then only the people in that situation would get the insurance, and then the prices go crazy. With an individual mandate, young people who really don't need health insurance by and large, to the degree that seniors would, all are paying. I mean, this is it's a lot like immigration, and that
The
it is a really
pre-existing condition
complicated
is
issue.
nonsense, and it really angers me. Like, I cannot tell you how much of my life has been wrecked by the ability of those companies to deny health care to people who already had a pre-existing condition.
But you can understand that a ban on denying people with pre-existing conditions health care, which you faced, that cannot exist
It
without
can't
a
exist
mandate.
unless you have everybody covered. And if you're going to have everybody
Exactly.
covered anyway, why not just do it the efficient way, which is to create single payer? Like, right
But
now,
then,
they basically.
what you get to what Tariq said, where he said, I have great health insurance. I'm lucky. I have a great job.
Say
And
you're rich. There's nothing
I don't want my
preventing.
insurance dumbed down.
Oh, no.
Well, there's nothing
You know what I mean?
preventing you from buying a better
Oh,
health
absolutely.
insurance plan.
Let me elaborate on what I said. Dan, there are 3 things I have to say here. One is, I disagree with the fact that, I mean, every American I talk to, be it Anthony, be it Dan, everybody says that government is inefficient. I counter that because I have seen worse governments. I've seen governments which are much, much worse than this. What exactly is wrong with your USPS system? Don't you get your mails on time? There are so many places in the United States where FedEx doesn't go. Can you
Yeah,
counter
but it's
that?
financially insolvent at the moment, and it's
it
because
is
they have so
financial-
many
it is-
offices in so many different areas.
Yeah, so cut down on that. What I'm saying is it's financially insolvent for many reasons. I can show you bills which was passed in the last few years where they were asked to cover costs for the next 10 years or so upfront. There was so many legal, I can show you legal laws which were legislated because kind of pushing them to bankruptcy. And each one, and I can also show you that the legislations were made by congressmen who are actually getting funds from FedEx and other systems. You want me to prove that? I'll show it to you. So basically, there's dirty politics there. Now, I can tell you this. They are insolvent because, as you said, they may have too many branches. It should not be working like a subsidized system. That is the problem. If it's working like a subsidized system so that government has to pour money into it, then yes, I agree, it is inefficient. It's similar to how you look at Amtrak, for example. I believe Amtrak is also a government company, right? But
no, it's a government.
Quasi, yeah.
Yeah.
Also, but Sariq, you also have to look at, this is about 10 years ago, a friend of mine whose dad is a postal, or is or was, is or is a retired postal worker. She told me that her dad made about $100,000 a year walking around, and you assume that's plus benefits and all that stuff. So, that's a lot of freaking money 10 years ago, right? It's a lot of money now, $100,000 a year to walk a postal route. And so I'm wondering, that there is the charge that the Republicans, front-loaded their pension system and made them put all that money in there, and then they have to go through hoops and barrels to try to raise the thing. They should do that. I mean, they should sell advertising on the side of the vehicles. They should raise the price of a stamp to $1. They can cut out Saturday delivery. I mean, there's all sorts of things they can do. But I don't like the only option being shut down, hundreds or thousands of post offices in little towns, because the people who still use the postal service are people. The people who still use it are often people who are not internet connected, and would be actually hurt by the removal of those things. And there are other ways other than just shutting down, a third of the post offices or something.
Right. So let me read this for you. Since 1971, the Postal Service has not taken a dime from taxpayers. All of its operations, including the remarkable convenience of 32,000 local post offices, are paid by peddling stamps and other products. In 2006, the Bush White House and Congress whacked the post office with the Postal Accountability and Enhancement Act, an incredible piece of ugliness requiring the agency to prepay, remember that, prepay, the healthcare benefits not only of current employees, but also of all employees who will retire during the next 75 years. Yes, that includes employees who are not yet born. How do you say that? How do you justify
What's your
that?
source for that? Is that from some, it sounds like some left-wing blog.
I have read this in many places. I actually saw one.
Where are you reading that from? What's the site?
I'm reading from a site called creators.com. But this is one guy's opinion. But
Say
I
it
can
again?
show it to you on other websites. Creators.com.
I mean, it's obviously an opinion site. So, like, is there?
Oh, obviously, I agree. But what I'm saying is, it's not the first site I'm reading this. There is a forum in Reddit called it's called an IMA. Basically, I am so and so. Ask me anything. So one guy who is a senior director or something in USPS came on there, and people could ask him questions. And I mean, this particular act is publicly available. You can go ahead and check whether it mandates that every employee and the future employee should be covered in health benefits for the next 75 years or not. It's public information. Forget about this website. Somebody can't just write it, right? So what I'm saying is there is a conspiracy, and you cannot deny that corporations has done that before in this country. I am not saying USPS is efficient, but what I'm saying is there should be a way to run it in such a way that it does not make losses. Just run it. It does not make losses, it's fine. But don't kill it off just because corporations want to take over. That is my point. Again, so going back to what...
Yeah, that's good advice. It shouldn't be killed off. It should just be modified.
It's just modified. Cut the fat. If there are unions in there, you have to deal with them and say, hey, enough is enough. We're not going to pay money to... I mean, I'm not supporting any union. As you know, I come from a place where there is a lot of communism, and I'm totally against it. But it's an efficient system. It's a beautifully working system. Why kill it when you can make it? Maybe it's not profitable, but it's not loss. And another thing, so there is a thin line when you said that single-payer system is run by the government. Now, here what you're actually doing is you're comparing it with Canadian healthcare, or any one of the European healthcare, let's take NHS for example in Britain, and even in India there is a chain of government healthcare systems. But here is my point. Having a system run by the government in terms of insurance is different from actually having hospitals which are operated by the government, doctors who are paid by the government, which is bullshit. That will deteriorate everything. I know.
Yeah, I totally agree.
Yeah.
Like that would be where it all falls apart.
That is total disaster. But if the insurance is handled by a single payer, I am not really that against it, and I'm willing to, if everybody in the country is okay with that, and it is a law, I'm willing to give away my, I'm not rich or anything, I just have a job and the company is covering me. If everybody is under a single payer healthcare and the hospitals or the facilities are not run by the government, I'm fine with that. But the argument against is preemptive. The argument is, oh, it's just a sliding slope. Initially, the government will just run the healthcare. Then slowly they will decide that all the hospitals, doctors should be paid by them. That is bullshit. That's what I'm saying. That I don't believe in. Because I've seen worse.
All right, Anthony, final thoughts.
Oh, I don't know. I mean, if the government can't...
Go ahead.
Wait, are we talking about healthcare or are we talking about the post office?
Everything, Anthony.
What was the most interesting thing that you saw on the internet today, Anthony?
Oh, I didn't see anything interesting on the internet today. I saw that kid that dropped through the sidewalk, which I'm pretty sure you talked about. So,
what'd you think about that? That was crazy, wasn't it?
Dan, do you mind if I give my final thoughts on the whole healthcare thing before I jump out?
Absolutely. Go ahead, Monica.
Yeah, I just wanted to say that I think most people who assume that a government, run insurance plan would be worse than what we have now. And I am unfortunate living proof of the fact that it can't get worse than this. One of the stories that I tell, that I've lived through, that horrifies people, and I can tell it here, but I will horrify your audience. It always does. Is the time an insurance company tried to force me out of the hospital right after I had done chemotherapy and I had lost the sight in this eye. They decided that I had had my maximum stay in the hospital that was allowed to me under the diagnosis of lupus, and although they had just administered the chemotherapy to me that day, they wanted me to go home. And so First, they talked with the doctors, apparently. I found this out afterward. And the doctors said, no, she's not well enough to go home. That's medically unsafe. We won't do it. So the doctors did not even tell me the insurance company had called them to talk about discharging me. Then they called my cell phone. And so I answered it. And it was a lady who identified herself as a nurse from United Healthcare. And she said, I just was calling to welcome you home from the hospital. And I said, what are you talking about? Like I'm still in the hospital. And she said, I know. Why are you still there? I can see your records in front of me, and you are perfectly well enough to go home. And I was just like, what? And I started to get really stressed out because she talked on and she was implying that basically, unless I left the hospital, they wouldn't cover the entire bill, which I later found out was a bluff, but I didn't know it. And so I told the doctor I had to leave the hospital. I had to go because I couldn't afford to go medically bankrupt and, not be able to obtain my medication. And so they said, well, it's really medically unsafe. We won't let you do it. And eventually I persuaded him I have to go, it's not an option. I can't go bankrupt. So they had me do physical therapy, and they had me walk up a flight of stairs to prove that I was physically capable of getting into my apartment when I got home. And so I walked up a flight of stairs, and then I passed out, just blacked out entirely, and they had to rush me to the cardiac unit and hook me up to a heart monitor. And then they called the insurance company back, and they said, unless you stop threatening this girl, we are going to sue you on her behalf because you can't be endangering the life of our patients. So my point is that, like, most people assume that our system we have now is good and works. Unfortunately, it doesn't. And the whole reason that United Healthcare probably does that is because if they do that similar thing with 10 patients and 9 of them leave the hospital and are fine, but the 10th leaves the hospital and dies, to them, you know, they've saved a lot of profit. It's probably a smart move financially. Ethically, well, I can say it was horrible to live through.
Well, Monica, every cloud has a silver lining. We just got a comment on YouTube that you should be a glasses model.
Oh, thank you.
Isn't that nice?
That's a kind comment.
And then
That's probably a new one for you.
Dan,
Yep.
since you asked me for the source, I have the law from prc.gov. Search for Postal Service Retiree Health Benefit Fund. Go down and look at the amount of money they're forced to pay every year, 2007 to 2010.
Yeah, we got to. That's too in the weeds. I'm gonna look at it and we could talk about it. But I definitely want it because I keep hearing this that
Totally.
that they set them up for failure by pushing this through. But it just sounds too good to be true. I want to find out more details because I don't trust anything I read.
It's totally in my interest also to know whether this is true or not. And as a journalist, you may want to look into it.
Exactly. Yeah. I googled the same thing. The Postal Accountability Enhancement Act. I see the actual act itself, and then I'm trying to get all the different takes on it to try to interpret it. It's tricky. So I want to look into that because I keep hearing that same thing.
Oh, I do as well, and I was surprised.
Yeah, it's going to be a continuous debate. So we'll see. So Sreek, final thoughts, and then Anthony. Give Anthony a second to check his Twitter feed or whatever the hell he does.
I'm going to give Anthony. I'm passing the buck to Anthony first.
All right, last word, Anthony. Anything
Well,
interesting? Or?
Google Drive came out, which I still don't have an invite to, so.
Oh,
no,
you didn't
nothing
I
interesting.
I thought that was an automatic update because I went right to it and I looked at the initial. I mean, after seeing literally every other post on Google was about this. I went to it and I had the option right there to do it, and I installed it and got on and played with it for a couple minutes, and then I see that once we did a hangout about it, that other people were saying that they couldn't get in or had to wait for an invite, and I'm surprised that they didn't say that in their announcement that it's rolling out. I mean, the way that they said it, like it's here, like everyone has it.
Right, and that's not. Whatever,
But why would you need an invite for that? You said invite?
Yeah, like if you go to, you had to, not you, when I went to the site, let me do a screen share. Said, notify me when it becomes available, and, I click that. And now it says, we'll email you when your Google Drive is ready.
Oh, for me, have you used Google Docs before?
Yeah, I use Google Docs all the time.
I didn't even do anything. I just went in drive.google.com and just signed up, and I downloaded that application on my Mac. Do you use Windows or Mac? Do you have, Dan, is there a Windows app for it?
Yeah, you download it, and it will create a drive on your, right on your computer. When you click like directories or whatever, you have your C drive, your D drive, and you'll have Google Drive.
Right.
Or it's actually a folder under your user account on Windows. But yeah, I'm looking here, Anthony. It says we'll email you at when it's wow, that's a whole thing.
Yeah, I never seen that too. I thought it was by default for everybody.
Yeah,
Man, you're not on the right list, Anthony.
interesting, but
Get you.
Well, like I said, I got got a free computer from Google, and so, they got, like, I don't know, I think that if you
You're
I don't
breaking
know,
up.
Man, Sarik, we got to
but
buy this boy a microphone or something.
To whom?
Anthony, we got to get him a microphone.
I think otherwise his microphone is good. I think it's the connectivity that sometimes he breaks up.
yeah, I think it's because I'm doing this screen show.
Oh, okay.
How do you actually speak,
Right.
Anthony? What kind of microphone are you using? Are you using like something on a laptop or a webcam or what?
It's just the laptop.
Say again?
The laptop.
You should go to Walmart, and for $18, you can buy a headset with a microphone that sounds great. It's a GE brand. It's not with the computer stuff. It's with the telephones. Look where the telephones are, and the Magic Jack, and the actual like different kinds of like landline phones and stuff like that. And you'll see. I think it's like $17.99 or $18.99. It's a GE brand headset, and my telemarketers use it, and it sounds fantastic.
What's it
You
called?
should get one of those. I'll show you. Hang on. I got a couple of them here.
Anthony, what do you feel about the Google Drive features? What's your opinion on that?
Oh, good. I finally got it to go away.
What's that? Yeah, you're trying to get it out?
Well, I mean, like I said, I don't have it, but I mean, like I'm not. I'm not big into these, like
online
these
storage?
Dropboxes and Box.net and Ubuntu ones. So I mean, I don't see myself actually using it, So like I'm not getting all excited about it that I don't have it yet, but
This is it, Sarik. It's this is the headset. It looks it's a GE brand, right? And it's got the headset, a real flexible microphone, and this is $18 at Walmart. But again, it's not with the computer stuff where you'll overpay for some fancy Plantronics thing. This is where the telephones are.
I paid $70 for this Apple whatever, but these have earbuds as opposed to the. I don't know how I sound, but I'm just hoping it's okay.
You sound okay, but like Anthony, he has a headset anyway. He might as well have a headset with a mic, because like your audio, Anthony, would improve like 5,000% if you would get something closer to your mouth.
right.
I would love for you to go to. I will like PayPal you or send you my Visa card or something. Please.
Well, yeah. Send me your Visa card.
Yeah.
And
We'll be at the Bahamas next week, I'm sure.
Well, is that a I mean, it's funny that anybody can use anybody's card and they don't really care, right? I mean, ideally you're supposed to sign and they're going to check the sign behind.
Inspector says Google is mad about Anthony's audio quality.
That is Arthur Ricker, right? I don't know how.
Yeah, it is. Now we're finding out.
Yeah, I can't remember. I can't pronounce his last name. Well, he doesn't know my full name. Then he'll say the same thing probably. Anyway, so.
All right. Final thoughts, guys.
Well, it was one of the landmark days for. But here's my question. I understand Alan. Alan probably expects a lot, which is not a bad thing. And as a Google fan, I also expect a lot. But I would have been really disappointed if the Google Drive was just any other what is that? Any other storage device or storage area where you can just put all your files and blah blah blah. But I'm happy at the fact that there is at least some sort of integration. There is a lot more integration I would like. The cost is actually much better than Dropbox. And knowing Google and the fact that they always keep improving stuff, they never stop. I'm thinking that almost everything Google has, where you will have some kind of files, probably will have a default access to Google Drive. And I also think that now it's 5 GB. Who knows? Tomorrow they might say, okay, you guys can take 10 GB. They have the space. They don't really care, you know. So that's why I like it. And it is actually nice if they give us an option to.
Can you say GB one more time for me?
Say what?
GB one more time for me?
GB?
Yeah, 5 GB.
5 GB. Why is that?
Final thoughts, Anthony.
How else can you say GB?
No, I just think it's funny. You would actually say GB instead of gigabytes. But I love to hear some Sarik talk. Okay, Anthony, final thoughts.
Final thought. If the United States government can't support Social Security, how are they supposed to support health care?
Well, that's a very good question, Anthony. There are so many things the United States government will not be able to support. And everything, you know, what as a future American citizen, what I fail to understand is, it has increasingly become impossible for the U.S. government to support a lot of things, right? We all agree on that?
Well, obviously. I mean, there's no, you know, it's fact, you know?
Right.
There's no debating this.
And you have to understand that the money is not just because the government is big, it's also because of our national debt and the amount of interest we are paying for it and a lot of things, social services, as well as we give away a lot of money for welfare, everything included, correct? Now, if this is going to go on, there will come a time when you will not be able to afford and you will default. Not just Social Security, you will default. If you remember, last year, our credit rating went down from, what's that, AAA to BBB? I don't know.
I think it went down just like AAA to like A, right?
Right.
Dan?
But since dollar is the standard, it doesn't really matter because the guy at the topmost in the class, if he goes down by one step, it doesn't really matter. Everybody else is still below him. So that's how it works. But my point is, sooner or later, governments will think, okay, this is not working. So, and everybody on the liberal progressive side knows that. They know it. And, you know, they might argue for it, they might fight for it. But unless corporations are willing to give up on their profit a little bit, Dan will argue that you can't run a business without profit. I agree. I totally agree. I have a business back home, and I want profit, otherwise I'm not running it. But there's a thin line or a big line between greed and profit. So if you actually think, corporations actually think that, oh, I'm going to make as much profit as I can, as much as I can squeeze, eventually, it's like killing there's a proverb in India, killing the golden
goose
or whatever it is. So you can milk all you want right now, but sooner or later there will be nothing there to milk. That's my point. That's my final words.
On that note, there will be nothing left to milk from the golden goose.
Yes, whatever.
We will close.
Who actually milks a goose anyway? So
I don't think I think the Dalai Lama has you beat this week, sir. I got
Maybe it was you're milking the golden cow.
I'm just worried about what people will do in the comments with that whole situation.
You can't mention the cow. That is actually.
We might have to censor some of the comments after that. Okay.
I'm willing to eat a cow, but I'm not willing to talk about it.
Another one that could be easily misconstrued. Okay, thanks so much to Sarik and to Anthony and all the other folks who participated earlier on. This is High Tea at Harrods. We're at Harrods restaurant in London, England, having tea and different chat stations, and we're just chatting here. So, and if you believe that, then Sarik will sell you a golden goose that gives milk. All right, so thanks so much, guys.
Golden molten milk.
Yes, indeed. In euros. Okay, thanks so much. Y'all have a great Tuesday night, and we will see you tomorrow, I think.
All right. Good night.
Have fun. Good night. Good night, guys. Thanks.
Good night.
Good night.